Chapter 19. The daily papers carried news of Nigeria's coup d'état, but it was several weeks before Vanessa received Teo's telegram letting her know that he and his family were well. He didn't say when he would be back, but she hoped that it would not be long. She thought often of their last day together, when she had gone to see him, not knowing until she arrived that he had received a telegram calling him home. She remembered offering to help him pack and how he had responded by pushing the suitcase aside and reaching for her instead. "Come," he urged, pulling her gently towards the bed. He didn't seem to care that it was the middle of the morning when anyone might pass by. "Shhhh," he insisted, pressing gently against her lips before locking the door. "Better?" He smiled, peeling off his shirt as he joined her on the narrow bed that creaked with the added weight. And soon neither of them cared if anyone heard them or the noise of the bed as it thudded against the wooden floors. "You won't leave me, will you?" Vanessa whispered when they lay exhausted side by side. "Never," he said, wrapping his arm more tightly around her waist. "I love you, Vanessa." Vanessa had picked March as the month when Teo would surely be back. But, instead, March marked the time when his letters stopped. She wrote, phoned and sent telegrams but still no reply. And then one day, feeling utterly distraught and not knowing what to do, she heard that he had been in touch with Belial. Why had he not written to her? And of all times to leave her feeling abandoned, he had chosen the weeks just before her exams. It was a whole week later before she received Teo's letter. "Dear Vanessa, please forgive me for taking so long to write to you. I have tried to write this letter so many times over the past few months, but each time it seems as if the gods have conspired to stop me. First, it was the news of the coup, which by now you must know all about, and then of course the start of the civil war. But in between all of this came my father's second heart attack. _LT has been a very difficult time for my family, but Father is pulling through and I now feel an immense sense of relief. We were also worried about Uncle Kode in there midst of all of these political events, and I will tell you more about it when I see you, but at least he, too, is safe and well at this time. I don't know when I will be returning to Oxford, but I am hoping that it will not be too long. I have been in touch with the college and they have shown great understanding. I miss you so much, Vanessa, and I do hope that you understand the reason for my silence during this time. I may not have written, but you have been on proprietary mind every single day. I have so many half-finished letters that I started to write to you. I'm rereading one now in which I described to you the way that people have grown up and things have changed. The buildings that one once thought large now 100k so small next to the new construction, offices, banks, hospitals, and schools. And then there is also the heat, that one bad forgotten. You know how much one hate the cold, and yet this heat is too knock. Even there, food is spicier than one remember. And you mustn't laugh, but one really think that England has blunted my taste buds. My younger brothers tease me, calling me Oinbo, that's how we refer to expatriates, for forgetting how to take pepper. I think of you all the time, and when I look at things, I try to imagine what you would see. I am even using my sense of smell, like you. Rain, for example. Like the smell of sea meeting earth, so sweet and comforting. And all the wonderful aromas of cooking. This morning akara is being fried in the back of their house where the cooking is done, and in the front of our house, there is always the delicious smell of roasted corn. A woman sits out there in the street with her open fire, turning the cobs by hand and selling them to bystanders. Vanessa Arceau had his letter, over and over again, feeling terrible for him and wretched for what she had done. Getting drunk out of self-pity had been bad enough, but going off with Charlie was worse. She knew that Theo would never do anything like that, and if he ever found out. Luckily, nothing much had happened with Charlie, and at least one thing was now clear to her. She wasn't going to keep waiting for Theo to come back. Now that exams were over, she would go to Nigeria, and nothing, not even the Biafran War, was going to stop her. Telegrams were exchanged, and 2 weeks later she flew to Nigeria. When she landed in Lagos, the first thing she saw were men in green fatigues, with fat, black belts and oversized boots, patrolling the tarmac with guns slung carelessly across their chests. It brought home to her the fact that here was a war, and the danger she was in by coming to Nigeria at such a time, especially since Theo had sent a telegram asking her to postpone her trip. She stood for a moment, trying to take it all in: the heat, the blinding brightness of the sun, people milling around. Then she saw him across the tarmac. Theo, in a crisp white shirt and sandals, looked cool and devastatingly handsome, and just as quickly as she had thought about the war she forgot it. They checked into a hotel. Theo said they would stay in Lagos for a few days before traveling up to Ibadan to meet his family. It was a small hotel with ceiling fans and private bathrooms. It was perfect and romantic, but first, Theo wanted to show her around. They took a short walk through Lagos, and everywhere they went people turned to stare. Children followed them chanting Oimbo Peep, which made her smile. She told Theo that she felt like the Piper, but Theo seemed less charmed by the train of followers. More than once, he tried shooing the children away, becoming increasingly impatient with them. Vanessa had never known Theo to be impatient, but this was now his country, and she sensed that he was trying to protect her. She felt touched by his concern. She stared at all the beautiful people, some wearing Western clothes, others in more vibrant local attire. Hundreds of them, running, dodging, walking and cycling, as they wove their way along the busy roads full of polluting lorries and imported cars that honked and beeped incessantly. Market stalls were everywhere with their rusted tin roofs, and women sitting outside, spread out on mats or perched on upside-down buckets, whistling for business with their products piled high in front of them. People laughed and shouted, sometimes all at once. It was all wonderful to Vanessa, but, best of all, she was here with Theo. Late that afternoon they returned to the hotel. She wasn't hungry, but Theo insisted that they go to a restaurant, where they ordered rice and plantains. He ordered for her the mildest things on the menu, and yet her eyes still streamed from what the owner claimed to be merely small peep. Theo laughed at her valiant efforts to eat, reminding her of the time she had coughed her way through their food at the West African Society in Oxford. He laughed most when they spoke of Oxford, but became more serious when they talked about family and the war. She noticed that occasionally Theo would just stare into space. She knew he was worried about his father and the state of his country, which was why she agreed to go dancing, even though she was exhausted, knowing that the music would relax him. They went to Bobby Benson's, the legendary Bobby B's, where a local band was playing juju. Theo was his loose and playful self, and this time she joined him, letting go and not feeling self-conscious, even though, as the only white woman, she was watched by everyone. Back in the hotel there was no electricity, but it didn't matter. they fell into bed where they were serenaded by crickets and frogs. There, in their dimly lit room illuminated only by candlelight and enveloped in the piquant smell of insect repellent, they made love. Vanessa woke up early the next morning to find herself alone in bed. Theo was already up and pacing by the window. She watched him, admiring the curves of his body and the muscles that stood out on his ebony skin, which had grown even darker in the months away. "What is it, Theo?" He jumped in surprise. "Nothing, my love." He turned to her and lifted the mosquito netting to get back into bed. "I've just got to buy a few medicines for my father," he said, kissing her lightly on her forehead. "Can I come?" "Why don't you stay? I'll be right back." After he left, she took a bath and then wandered around the hotel grounds, stopping to buy some akara from a street seller. She was thinking of venturing further when she gripped her stomach in pain and hurried back to their room. The next hour was spent cursing herself for having ignored Theo's advice about eating from the streets. "Did you find the medicines?" she asked sheepishly when he returned. "No." He shook his head. She was about to tell him what had happened when she saw the anxious look on his face. "Theo, what's wrong? Something's not right." He stared past her, looking pained. "I didn't buy THC medicine, Vanessa. I just went out for a walk to clear my head, but it didn't help." "What is it?" She offered her hand, but he wouldn't take it. "Vanessa, I don't know how else to say this, but—" "What? What is it, Theo?" "I've had an affair." "You what?" For a second she felt relief that she wasn't the only one who had done something wrong, except that hers could hardly be called an affair. "And it's worse, Vanessa, it's worse. The woman is pregnant." She stared at him in shock. "I'm sorry, Vanessa, I just don't know what else to say. I didn't mean to. It didn't mean much. I come all this way for you to tell me this. I tried to tell you to delay your trip because of the war, you said. I just wanted it to go away somehow. Well, it's not going away. What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "You don't know? How can you not know?" "All I know, Nessa, is that I love you." But by then she was gone, slamming the door behind her, only vaguely aware that Theo was running after her. The heat was making her dizzy, stabbing pains had seized her stomach, and somewhere off in the distance someone was playing Otis Redding's Dock of the Bay.